Okay, well, welcome to the last session of the meeting. It's always a mixed feeling, right? The last session, we are sort of ready to go home, but hey, you know, it's been so wonderful. Anyhow, well, we saved the best for the last in the conference, and this is a panel of our distinguished representation from of the college presidents. And I have a very brief introduction, and it will be free-floating, and they will all chime in their views on the subject matter of rankings. And the rankings are everywhere. You can buy them. You can see them on the websites. There's the U.S. News World Report, which makes millions of dollars just by ranking us. Isn't that amazing? You know, people just make a lot of money, a whole lot more than we do by simply ranking us.
Someone just a clicker. Someone walk over.
Okay. Thank you. And well, we live in a very competitive world. I mean, we live in a very, very competitive world. And in fact, it is very competitive in every sense of the word itself. Digital communication really changed the world in an unprecedented way. Internet serving now as the biggest equalizer amongst entities on the globe, around the globe. So, there's competition for global leadership. There's national competition. That's who is the best in this country or that country. There's a corporate competition. Which corporate is better than the other? And then there's the individual competition. We all have aspirations and the goals in life, and somebody else sort of shares those goals and aspirations. So there's competition to achieve those. And we live in a technological world, no matter who says what, and we have technology embedded in every aspect of our life. And the technological state of the nation basically defines their state in the global sense. And just because a country has natural resources or cash flow doesn't mean that they are ranked high or people want to go there. I'm just looking at the refugee pathways and et cetera, right? People can have a lot of minerals and the oil and a lot of cash, but there's something else is missing that our panel will address. So what's the role of universities? Okay, the biggest role of universities, the way it started out, is to produce people who can do things. In other words, produce competent people for our workforce. Then universities evolved to also produce new knowledge, which we call research. New knowledge that will contribute to both the improvement of the human life and also the economy and technology. And that has, in fact, become very important, if not even more important, in the last few decades. And then the third role of universities is actually to provide facilities and the brain power for the local industries, the economy. In other words, if you need an SEM or a TEM or some kind of an expensive machine that you only need to use it 10 times a year, you don't want to invest $1 or $2 million to buy the equipment. You want to just get the results of your work. So universities provide that environment. It's an excellent environment. And universities also provide the technical competence that when people have questions, they come and ask. Now, how do we rank universities? What is it based on? Professional quality, intellectual capacity, and competence of its people essentially create the institution's image and reputation. It's not the buildings, it's not how pretty it is, or it's not where it's located. And a lot of people underestimate the work by these people, the presidents of the universities. The academia is a very complex machinery. It's nonlinear, and it has many, many moving parts. So coming to our panel, rankings are important because it puts location to universities. Where are they? And if we want to get somewhere, we need to think like those who are already there is one of the principles that we get. Now, rankings. Rankings are important for defining our peer and developing our aspirations. So we want to know who else is like us and who do we want to be like when we grow up. So And if you talk to people, everybody has their own opinion, and they don't get aligned all the time, because those who rank high, they like the rankings. And those who won't get ranked high, they don't like rankings. But the fundamental principle is that rankings are here to stay. So it's something we have to learn and live with. And so furthermore, rankings have direct economic impact, especially on the institutions. The tuition, how many people want to come and what to do is very important. We all know that the rankings suffer from subjectivity. Okay, you can talk to people, everybody has their own opinion, what should count, what should not count, etc. And also they are very slow in moving one way or the other. So that's another task that our presidents are facing. Coming to the presidents, this is one of my favorite phrases that I always apply when I'm in positions to make judgments. That's leadership develops the environment, and the environment determines the behavior. It is not the presidents how many papers they write. It is how many people in that institution get inspired to write more papers and more accomplished, more this, more that. So in fact, when we focus on those successful people in academia, what we also have to thank is the administrative manpower behind those successes that made those successes actually possible for these people. So let's not underestimate the role of our presidents, and they are here to share with us their opinion on rankings. And I'm not going to go through any introduction because, first of all, most of you know most of our panelists here. We have Dr. Ümran İnan from Koç University, president of Koç University, Ahmet Acar, Middle East Technical University, happens to be my alma mater also. Dr. Haluk Özen from Hacettepe University, well, that's where my wife graduated from. Mustafa Aydın is from Kadir Has University, a relatively new university around Haliç, a spectacular. Okay. I hope so. Thank you. And yeah, Kadir Has, it's a wonderful place. In fact, there was a time when Mehmet Öz's father, Mustafa Öz, was at Kadir Has University in the medical school. And Erhan Erkut is with us on the from the MEF University as a very interesting presentation. And Güven Sak from TOB, Türkiye Odalar Birliği. Where's Güven? Okay. In fact, I believe that's still the place for Sadık Kakaç, right? Professor Sadık Kakaç with you. So we have a very distinguished panel. I cannot think of a better selection of people to express their opinions and how do we place Turkey and their institutions in this ranking, in this global view of the academicians. Now, I will start with Dr. Ümran İnan, because he has also a flight to catch, I think. Okay. So with this, I turn the panel to our panelists, and let's go with their views, and then there will be a lot of interactive questioning, both with the audience and the panelists, as well as amongst the panelists too. This is more based on discussion than technical presentation. Okay. Ümran, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to express my thanks to the organizers for this really marvelous conference. I enjoyed every minute of it, and I think really fantastic. Thank you very much. Rankings are a strange thing, and I think that really anybody in his right mind should not pay any attention to it, basically, and we don't also at Koç University. And I think if you design things for rankings, it doesn't work. I mean, basically, university administration is a matter of just efficient use of resources. It's either a state university or a foundation university. If it is a state university, the taxpayer has provided a very substantial investment. If it's a foundation university, a foundation has provided a very substantial investment. So the idea is how best to use it for the betterment of the country. And then there are measures of what is betterment. So we go back to Wilhelm von Humboldt. Universities are old. They are 1,000-year-old. Bologna, University of Bologna was 1,000 years ago. But the concept of the research university was introduced at University of Berlin by a philosopher named von Humboldt. And he advocated the point that a university consists of students and faculty. And all of the faculty are actually researchers, and they are pushing the boundaries of research in their own fields. And in fact, he went on to say that the sole purpose of the research university was in fact to advance the boundaries of teaching, almost as if, almost as if teaching was secondary. So then the question of these rankings and other things, how are you doing in the basic mission of the university? If you are out to be a research university, are you advancing the boundaries of knowledge? Is effectively a lot of your faculty, are they doing so? Because according to the research university concept, you only help your mission and vision, and therefore use the efficient use of the resources that are provided to you if you are actually, in fact, advancing knowledge, in addition to teaching what you already know. So that's my opinion of rankings. We don't pay any attention to it, but they are there, as was stated earlier. So you take into account what you see there, and sometimes you may actually measure yourself with respect to your colleagues at other universities. But we all need to work together anyway, and I think that most universities in Turkey cannot really afford to be in a negative competition, because they have to be in a competing and collaborating way in which they add to one another. Because Turkey is not a very rich country, it's not a poor country either, but it needs to use its resources efficiently and effectively. So my opinion is that I don't really care where Koç University is ranked in any given ranking. It's sometimes ranked high, sometimes ranked low. It doesn't matter. My mission is to appoint the best faculty and get the best students, and then actually get out of the way so that they can freely produce their best results without my interference. Because the worst thing a university administrator can do is to try to micromanage outstanding faculty and outstanding students. So that's my view. Thank you very much.
I think it's still best if we just go through the panelists first. It will be brief presentations and then open it to discussions, so there might be some repeat. Ahmet, would you like to take next, please?
Well, I'm happy to be here in this really, this is working, well-organized conference. See smiling faces of very accomplished academics and scientists in this building. And let me, well, thank the organizers, Janaja and others. Let me try to make my points in maybe 5 or 6 steps. Number one, those of us who remember the 70s in this country will probably remember a commercial, Alka-Seltzer commercial. It said, "I hate it, but I use it twice a day." So rankings are facts of life. You hate them, but you use them. With increased calls for accountability of universities. And secondly, rapid globalization, higher education and research make the rankings more and more inevitable. Despite the problems with reliability and validity, I'm talking about data use, methodology use, the intent of the organizations who produce these rankings. Some of them are commercial, and some of them are government, so they reflect certain bias. It's inevitable. So the question is whether to like rankings or not. I agree with my colleagues. If you rank high, you smile. If you rank low, you create excuses and so forth. So that's also natural. But I think my second question, or my second point, is how to deal with the impact of these rankings. One issue is how to improve on the rankings, or how to complement the findings of the rankings. And the second thing is how you actually manage it. When I talk about management of the outcomes, so you look at the potential users of these rankings. Number one are prospective students, both national and international. They are affected by international rankings, even though I think it's the least relevant piece of information for especially undergraduate students, because international rankings of universities stress on research rather than undergraduate teaching, which may or may not be connected to a large degree. Second is employers of your graduates. They're affected by ranking results. And, of course, politicians and governments. They keep an eye on the national or international rankings, because it becomes, at least from a perspective of national sort of glory. So if you have some of your universities ranking high in those listings, then it becomes a national issue. And of course, industry is seeking for collaboration, so they want to see who ranks high, and of course, public opinion. And in that respect, media and press is very instrumental in forming the public opinion. And of course, I should also include alumni. So they get very hyped up when the university gets a high ranking. You get congratulation messages, and say, if you rank in the 80s, so they say, let's go for the 25th place and so forth. So they're very sensitive about this issue. But I think the main point that I want to discuss is how it affects the universities themselves. How do the universities react to international rankings? And at this point, I want to repeat what Aziz Sancar said this morning. He said, you don't do research to get a Nobel Prize. You don't run a university to get high rankings. So if you do, you're in the wrong business. So then I say this with the understanding that whatever you measure in organizations happen. Organizations tend to sort of slide towards what you measure. So I agree with my colleague, Cameron Innan, that rankings should not become a beauty contest. So it's much more complex than this. It's much more qualitative as compared to what rankings can measure. So two important points to keep in mind is international rankings tend to undermine teaching in favor of research. So if you get sort of lose your perspective, then you tend to forget about your mission of producing well-qualified citizens, and not only in the national sense, but also in the international sense. So this is one important thing. And the second, I think the danger here is that even the very recently established universities try to get in those rankings, which is not very realistic, because you don't become a research university overnight. So, well, I can give you examples and stories of that, but I think it's very unfair on universities which are young, universities which are teaching-oriented. So another issue is the type of criteria that these rankings use. For example, in the recent years, many of the ranking systems decided to simply drop publications with a high number of authors, such as the papers based on CERN research, human genome research, human brain research, where typically you have maybe tens and even hundreds of authors participate in a certain journal. Then that means if you adopt this criterion, then you're telling your faculty members, I don't care if you participate in big research. Then I think it's very counterproductive. It's not good for the university. It's not good for science. So there are alternative ways of including their contribution in the whole picture. And well, let me maybe wrap up at this point by giving you some of the highlights underlined by the Hefei statement or declaration. Some of you, I'm sure you know about the Hefei Declaration of Research Universities worldwide. This declaration was signed by League of European Research Universities, 21 of them, and the American universities, Australian and Chinese and so forth. And the declaration or the statement gives a list of the crucial requirements, also the indicators of world-class research universities. In fact, there are 10 items, but I'm not going to list all of them here. But I want to underline the requirements, that the requirements include teaching as well as research. So a world-class research university is also a very effective teaching institution, not only at the graduate level, but also at the undergraduate level. So it has to be research-based, inquiry-based education. And another thing, of course, is to have tolerance, recognition, and welcoming of competing views, perspectives, and frameworks and positions I'm reading as being necessary to support progress, along with a commitment to civil debate and discussion. As a university, one of the requirements, one of the basic features that we are set on maintaining is freedom of expression, freedom of to do research on whatever the topic that you are interested in, that you're curious about, and how, as well as propagating the results of that research. And well, I can give you other aspects as well. So what I'm saying is that even the systems that are designed to measure only the research effectiveness or research excellence, it's not enough to look at the outputs, but you have to look at the impact of your research. And impact is, I don't think it can be captured by only looking at the citations. Impact is more than the citations, impact on the economy, impact on the society, as well as the science itself. And then the last thing that I want to talk about to stress is the concept of environment. Selçuk Hoca mentioned environment, and I want to especially mention that research environment, as well as the research output and research impact is important to the success of the universities. And there's the process to create this research environment is very sort of tedious and multidimensional. So in essence, or in summary, rankings tell you something. They hold a mirror to your university. So you can see a beautiful creature in that mirror, but it's a many-faceted reality. So you keep an eye on the ranking results, but not set your eye on it. Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmet. Thank you. Next, we will hear from MEF University. You know, in Turkey, there are a large number of universities that have developed recently, and we are very happy, very proud of them. And today, in fact, this is a little bit more analytical presentation, so I think it's good to get some of the metrics for rankings and how it's all done. Okay. Did we ever succeed in detecting this machine? Yeah, they're not working. I'll just do it. All right, plan B. If you're a teacher, you're supposed to be ready to go for plan B and then plan C and whatever else might work. I had beautiful visuals, really beautiful visuals. I can say that now because you're not going to be able to see them. If you like, I'll be happy to send you the visuals. So it's plan D. You mean your email? I sent it to you. Yeah. Build them up.
So we will see exactly how beautiful.
I'm caught. I'm caught. Would you like to take over the next? Okay. So what we will do is we'll download from the emails and load it to the system. And I hope it will work then.
So while you're sorting that out, I'll step in and fill the gap. I think we all agree that ratings have bias towards older, bigger, richer universities. With medical school or established strong engineering schools and research projects. But the universities are not all that only. As Ahmet Hoca already mentioned, there are lots of things about the universities that one has to consider, especially if you are going to send your children to a university. you don't really look the research output. But in Turkey, the question comes about every couple of months, in fact, through the press. So I would argue that it's a press-driven issue in Turkey, not the university-driven issue. We have about 4 or 5 education editors in different newspapers, and every few months one of them asks the question, why there is no Harvard in Turkey? And then they start picking, especially from the older state universities. Some, 2 of them are here, and then some of the older private or foundation universities, and asking why you haven't succeeded that. There is no use to try to explain to them that the Harvard is so many years older than any Turkish university, has so much millions more money than any Turkish university to invest, and it's in the United States, not in Turkey. Yeah. So that makes huge difference, actually. So if you look at, on general, different rankings, you also notice that most of the universities who are succeeding in the rankings comes from developed countries. Of course, there are other rankings now. The companies are preparing to earn even more money. They prepare rankings for Southeast Asia, for Middle East, for regional, and also for country-based rankings. So, we have to be suspicious why they are all preparing this. Why an American company is preparing a ranking for universities in Turkey. So this is my first point. And of course, fortunately for us, the lay people, parents, most importantly for the universities in Turkey, have not yet noticed the importance of rankings. Importance is in quotation marks, of course. The biggest, I would say, the biggest ranking in Turkey is the results of central examination, student central examination. And it's not only that, of course. People and the parents and the students has to consider various other factors. It's not only the quality of the university. Quality of the university comes into the picture when all the other factors are equal. When a student has certain amount of point that he or she can enter 5 different universities, which are either all free or almost the same amount of tuition fee, and in the same city mostly, then they start looking which is the better one. So the quality in Turkish mind is not there yet, unfortunately. But fortunately for us, it's not there. And of course, we have all know the problems of indexing and rankings. We face that as academics. It entered in Turkey in 1990s, early 1990s. The figures and the numbers, it fascinates people. But as we all know, we can make the figures and the numbers to lie easily. In 1990s in Turkey, in academia, these figures and the numbers led to what I would call index fixation. So all the universities, and mine included, and myself, I'm included, that fixation also, we push for more and more indexed articles. The result is different mafiosi groupings, different types of cheating, and having so many articles which nobody quotes, or presumably nobody reads either. So this is, we have to avoid this in Turkey, to have the same thing happen to the university rankings. The state, the Ministry of Investment, came up with another ranking for Turkey, innovative university ranking a few years back. It's just 3-4 years. And suddenly we found ourselves there. We haven't done anything to be innovative, but we found ourselves there somehow, 30-something. And then our students and graduates started questioning us why we are around 30s, why we are not in the first 5. And I said, we haven't done anything to be there, you know, and we are surprised why we are there. But still, it creates pressure, especially if you are a younger university and don't have too much to show to the public, then it's a pressure to have a number which you can use in your PR. Many universities in Turkey does it. And of course, it becomes even much more problematic when you have a university, a newly established university, barely 5 years old, claiming that within next 5 years, it will be among the top 3 universities in Turkey, and next 10 years, it will be another Harvard in the Middle East. These are the words that are used in Turkey. That's why I'm quoting them. I'm not just making them up. So this kind of approach towards ranking creates its own problems, own pressures for the university presidents and directors. What we do ourselves at our university, we take rankings with a healthy approach. We look at them. We see which universities in Turkey are higher placed, and we see what they do. You know, in the rankings, if they are there must be a reason. So we look at them, what they do, and how we can emulate some of the things that they are doing. So we look for a better experience and try to put an emphasis on, within the university, on quality assurance, procedures, institutionalization, accreditation processes, and try to avoid this fixation on either rankings or indexing. And I try to instill idea at the university, the idea of being able to do better research. This is a kind of a worldview. You have to instill within the university. You cannot force it. Or if it doesn't have it, you cannot force. You can create ways to increase within different rankings. For example, I'll give you an example from my own university. 10 years ago, they developed a PhD program on banking, PhD in banking. And at the time, the bankers, the people who work at the banks got promotions when they have PhDs. So the university enrolled 200 students at this must PhD program. Can you imagine 200 PhDs in banking? It was as it was when I took over the university. We look at it. I looked at it. I said, "How come?" But this put us in higher position in this innovative university rankings. So the new administration of the graduate school and myself, we look at it and we said, this cannot be. So we strengthened and we limited, and many people dropped out of the program, but our rankings went down. So there are ways of cheating rankings. If you choose the easy way and cheap way, then you can go up in the rankings, but I think that's not the right way. The right way is to invest on academics, professors, the faculty, to invest on infrastructure, to invest on the mentality of the university, so that in the longer run, you'll be there anyway. Okay, let me stop here. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything okay?
Ya, adaşız diye ben de güveniyordum size ama.
Okay, now we have the present. For me? Okay. Okay.
I mean, this is what happens when you have rectors on the panel.
Yeah, okay. Good. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I must express my appreciation. And, you know, it is a really tough job to put this program on. And I must thank all the organizers. And I think this is a very, very useful thing, both the scholars in the States and in Turkey as well. And I hope that this TASSA meetings will improve yet somewhat more every year, and I'm sure that it will. Now, being a very newly elected and appointed rector, and you see my rank here, I cannot, it's almost 2.5 months now, I cannot say that I do not consider the rankings at all. I think we must place ourselves somewhere in between. Fixation to rankings is not right. Ignoring the ratings is not right. Why? I don't want to repeat, but as we all know, every ranking system have some aspects that it emphasizes. Education, papers, internationalization, and even if you have an alumni who gets a Nobel Prize, you get enormous points in some of the rankings. So, I mean, you can see your university in the first 300 in one, and at the same time in the first 600 in the other one. So, I mean, it is a comparison of apples and oranges when you compare the universities. Let me give you an example. Now, you know, I admire Matthew a lot. And in our days, I mean, I am a doctor. I didn't go to Matthew because they didn't have a school of medicine. That's why. But they don't also have school of law, which we have. They probably don't have a faculty of fine arts, and we have conservatory. I mean, if you compare a university with these faculties to mostly an engineering-based university, I mean, the comparison doesn't seem to be sound. And if you are a state university, mostly, I mean, every university, whether it's a foundation university or state, we have something to pay back to our country. And in 2016, I know that it's silly to compare the faculties, but probably one of the most important faculties in a university should be Faculty of Education and Faculty of Law. But they don't produce H indexes. They don't produce that much papers to lift you up in the ratings. So, at the same time, as a president, you don't want to be feel bad when you see the rankings. So you should also emphasize on basic sciences, engineering, and medicine. In Hacettepe, I'm a bit lucky because I can balance those three faculties with a very well-established faculty of medicine, engineering, and basic science. But on the whole, if we take rankings too seriously and act accordingly, I think that's not the way to go. That's all my message. Thank you.
Okay, I think our next speaker will come from TOP University. It's also a very new university in Ankara. And we are pleased to have President Güven Pak with us. Do you have a presentation?
No. So let me introduce myself. I'm from the top University of Economics and Technology. We were just established around 12 years ago in Ankara. I'm the vice president of the university. I'd like to say a few words about the university, and then, depending on the panel now we now have here, I'd like to talk a little bit about myself, and then I'll tell you why I'm here, basically. And I think it is related with this ratings business too, at the end of the day. So let me say a few words. First, the university. It was established by TOBB, TOB, that's the Chamber Federation of Turkey. So it's a grassroots organization. It's the chambers of commerce and industry established all around the country. And they have decided to establish a university some time ago. And our focus mainly is on economics. And we have engineering departments. So we are also focusing on technology-related issues. Let me say a few words about myself, too. I'm the vice rector of the university. But again, around 12 years ago, we established the first economic policy research institute within the university because we would like to focus on this linkage between science and society more and more. That's the theme of the conference, this conference, and I was very much interested about that relationship. Right at the outset, Provost Isaacs, in his opening remarks, he mentioned the interdisciplinary character of research. The research is taking nowadays, basically, and he underlines the issue. I think he gave us an example about batteries, this solar energy storage facilities that the people are working here, and he told things like, so that you need electrochemists, government people, policy guys, and whatnot. He mentioned many people. I consider myself as one of those policy guys, basically, in Ankara. We are operating, focusing on economic policy issues. We are doing research on those issues. And we are trying to establish a framework between science, technology, innovation, and economic growth in Turkey, basically. And I think if you look at the role of the university, I think it changes also. I mean, the university, of course, is going to do the universal thing that it has got to do at the end of the day. But I don't think that countries like Turkey, countries like us, developing countries, has that resources, has that luxury to invest in all those labs that are operating here in this country, basically. We need to focus. We need to prioritize. We need to understand the linkages better about how to achieve this productivity growth issue. And of course, when you look at those ratings, those ratings do not consider those issues. That doesn't make those ratings bad. Those ratings are, of course, good. I mean, that should be the objective. But in order to achieve a kind of a sustainability in having that research environment, I mean, by putting everything together, of course, starting from freedom of speech, etc., in setting that ecosystem for that framework, you need to start from somewhere else. And I think we have a kind of a mistake there. When I look at, I mean, I'm not going to say that, how successful we are, for example, at TOB University in achieving things, etc. We were established just around 12 years ago. 12 years is nothing. I mean, if you look at the private university, the oldest private university in Turkey, it was established 25 to 30 years ago only. So it's not a kind of a, you can't expect great things from the universities. I think the issue, but let me come to the context that we have been, I mean, I have been following all the discussions in the last two days, basically. The issue is to discuss the role of the universities in terms of, bridging that gap or that linkage from science, technology, innovation to productivity growth. That's why, for some time now, we are in Ankara focusing more, following more what the Chinese are doing, what the Indians are doing, what the Russians have been trying to do, what the Brazilians are now trying to do, because I think we have a kind of a common ground in understanding this linkage and this technology transfer issue. It's not only about, sending people here and, helping them to better endow with this scientific knowledge thing, basically. That's not enough, because it's not functioning by itself, basically. So for that reason, I think we need to find out what's missing in our ecosystem. And in that ecosystem, as far as I see, as far as we see, that's the issue we are now focusing on in Ankara. You need to be choosy, you need to focus, prioritize. We have been following all those presentations from our government agencies too. I mean, they are spending a lot of money. But we are again supporting, financing, funding everything at the same time. But what Turkey needs, what countries like Turkey needs, we need to focus, we need to prioritize, we need to understand the impact of, first, the technology transfer, because the technology transfer then can create an environment, a sustainable environment for the R&D, for the research itself, basic research itself in the country, so that there will be some protagonists to carry that research further to companies and stronger universities also at the same time. So I think there is this prioritization thing is very much important, and obviously those ratings do not consider that issue when it comes to countries like us. And there, I think, a second important issue, a second important factor is to establish within the universities, near the universities, or in order to work together with all the universities, we need to establish some interfaces that can bring all the stakeholders together. That means our local companies, our local research labs, basically, and also multinationals, and also the international laboratories at the same time, and just focus on some projects, specific projects in specific areas, just to foster some kind of a change, a technological change in our countries, because it's obvious that if Turkey could not make this jump now, this technological jump at this stage, I don't think we will ever do it. We will ever become a wealthy country, let me say. Turkey has that capacity now to stay as a middle income country till the end. And I don't think it's the problem of the foreigners, I mean the Westerners, the people who are not living in Turkey, whether Turkey is going to stay as a mid-income country or not. So it's only our problem. It's our problem, and we have to find a mechanism. We have to define maybe a new role for our universities in this process. It's not about saying that, we have to have our type of universities. It's not that. But there is the need to define a new role maybe for our universities. So let me stop here. Thank you. Oh, I didn't see that.
Okay, I think we are ready to go with your presentation, and this does have analytical parts to it, and then we'll open up for discussion.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the talk you've been waiting for all day. My expectation was that I was going to provide some food for thought, and then that would start the discussion. Yet the reality is I got a lot of food for thought, and I'm going to react now. Us academics are really good at saying, I agree with everything that's been said before, on the other hand. So let me say that. I agree with everything that's been said before. On the other hand, it's not really about rankings. It's about measurement, okay? It's about accountability. I don't think anyone will argue that measurement is not good. I don't think anyone will argue that accountability is not good. I haven't met a single university administrator yet, and I've been an administrator in 3 different universities as dean, rector, and vice rector, that likes rankings. Even if you're ranked at the top, because that's the worst spot to be in. Everybody's gunning for you. Yet I also have to meet a single student or parent that doesn't ask about ratings. It's a fact of life. It's like Alka-Seltzer, okay? I've been dealing with this stuff since, I don't know, 2002. You can call me an academic voyeur. I'm interested in finding out why people think they're good, why people think that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And with the development of online search methods, this is becoming more and more easy now to look into what people are doing. I have written blog articles on this, and my articles actually criticize ratings and rankings in more ways than what's been discussed here. So I'm fully aware of all the limitations. Yet I also know that they are being used by people who are perhaps less educated or less visionary than we are. As academics, we don't care about them, but most of the rest of the world does. So I've compiled a sort of a summary of all ranking methods that I was able to get my hands on. I fully agree that we should not try to manage universities accordingly. In fact, one of the metrics that I think is exceptionally important, especially in Turkey, is what happens with your graduates. How many of them get employed? How many of them start their businesses? What's their economic contribution of your graduates? Nobody measures that. I'm keen to find out. You can measure patents, but that's kind of useless because we really need to know about commercialization of patents. Who measures that? Nobody. Who measures employability or employment rates of graduates? Nobody. Who measures teaching quality? Nobody. We don't measure what really matters because those things are difficult to measure. We measure what we can. Okay, that's kind of sad. I know, I understand those limitations, but I think no academic will argue that you should not take into account research output and impact. In fact, if you look at the different rating methods, they all take papers and citations into account. I'd say that's probably maybe 20% or 30% of what they ought to measure in comparing universities, and unfortunately that's where they stop. Some of them try to add a few other things, but the picture is rather incomplete. In fact, the most recent European exercise is probably the most comprehensive one, but they are not really processing a lot of universities yet, and it's a very expensive exercise. So noticing that every method uses papers or citations, I had this thought, there's this H index that combines these two and measures research output and impact in a perhaps more comprehensive way than any one single output. If H index of a person is 5, that means that person has 5 papers that receives 5 or more citations, but not 6 papers that receive 6 or more citations. So, for example, if you're a person that has one paper which has received 100 citations and a whole bunch of papers that receive no citations, your H index is 1. Okay? It doesn't matter that you have just one big shot. Alternately, if you have 100 papers all receiving 1 citation, your H index is still 1. But if you have 2 papers, each of which receive 3 or 4 in the, citations, then your H index is 2. So the H index is less easy to fool, and it does look at the total research output and impact perhaps more precisely than the single metric of papers or citations. With the Web of Science, we can actually calculate the H index of a university rather easily by simply entering the name of the university into the address box. And I've actually written a paper on this. It's in my blog. You can look it up. And I intend to repeat this study every 4 years. I'm using a sliding scale, a sliding window of 4 years. And I haven't really seen much change in the performance of the university. So I'd say that this metric is rather robust. I also have listed in great detail all sorts of problems with counts. I know all this, okay? There's all sorts of problems with counts. You can self-cite more often. You can gang cite. You can not cite the competing paradigms. People can simply omit your publications because they don't belong to the same village. We don't count books. We don't count proceedings. We don't count music. We don't count art. We only count what's countable. So clearly, anything that's based on paper or citation counts is biased towards medicine, science, and engineering. we all know that all measurements are imprecise. I mean, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle tells us that. Well, we measure what we can, and then we proceed knowing full well that this is not the entire picture. My experience, and I've seen some reference to this in the literature, group rankings or group performance measurements are a little bit more robust than individual performance measurements. You certainly cannot compare a scientist to a social scientist, but if you're comparing two groups of people that consist of roughly the same composition, then all of a sudden these comparisons start to make more sense. So here's my design. I'm looking at 4-year windows, and I looked at 35 universities in Turkey that were able to get an H-index of 10 or more. That's your first message right there. We have 200 universities, and only 35 of them manage an H-index of 10 over a 4-year time horizon. So it tells me that we don't have a lot of research universities in Turkey. There's not much research done in Turkey. If only 35 universities are able to manage H-index of 10, and I have some individuals in my database that have, by themselves, H-indices of 15, 16, 17 over a 4-year horizon. So those individuals are actually outperforming 160 of the remaining Turkish universities. That is sort of result number one. You need to be careful about names of universities because people find all possible ways of misspelling the name of their own university, and also the database entry people have interesting ways of adding to the confusion. So my students had to go through all sort of different ways of spelling these names so we don't leave out any citations or any output. I'm not going to show you any numbers because I don't want you to be focusing on rankings or numbers. Instead, I want to show you graphs, and I'm plotting faculty count on the x-axis and H-index on the y-axis. Faculty count versus H-index. It doesn't really, you can't really talk about H-index per faculty. That's a meaningless metric. You can talk about papers per faculty, citations per faculty. H-index per faculty doesn't make any sense. And the sort of linear, simple arithmetic doesn't really add much to the discussion. What we have is here input and output, okay? Faculty count is input and H-index is output. When you look at this XY chart, you can't say who's number one because that really doesn't make sense. And yes, I agree. We shouldn't focus on who's number one. But what we should focus on are the universities that seem to be doing well with their resources, okay? This is optimal use of scarce resources. You have a university with 1,500 faculty that produces an index of 25 versus 35 versus 45. Well, you can intelligently argue that this university is not doing as well as these other ones. It's being basically dominated. Those of you in economics and operations research and data analysis will know this frontier analysis, efficient frontier analysis. That's basically what I'm looking at. So when you look at this picture, if all universities were efficient, you'd see them all in the northwestern corner of this graph, and you don't. It's a bit disconcerting, really. The efficient frontier consists of these universities. And the distance between the universities, the other universities, and the efficient frontier gives you actually a sense of how efficient these universities are, quote-unquote, converting their faculty into research output. Okay? The efficient universities are the following. We've been hearing about how young the foundation universities are. Look who's at the efficient frontier. It's not the age, okay? It's what you do with your resources. And in case you're wondering, the near efficient universities, and then perhaps the less efficient universities. All of these ones have medical schools, okay? Medical school, 2,200 some faculty, 1,400 some faculty. Same H-index. What does that tell you about Istanbul versus Hacettepe? What does that tell you about Ankara versus Hacettepe, or even Bilkent versus Ege? Look at the number of faculty here and the H-index. I just don't think this is irrelevant, okay? I think there's a message here, and I think university administrators would be mistaken to ignore this message. Now, what about world comparison? Okay, so let's get out of our mother's league, annemizin ligi. How do these results compare to world universities? I've done a simple comparison. I've looked at URAP rankings, and I took number 10. Didn't take number 1. You don't want to. That's too far up. I took number 10, Michigan, number 100, UCal Irvine, and number 200, University of Belgrade. And I compared our best in H-index, Hacettepe, to those. And that's the result. We can say we're a poor country, but so is Yugoslavia, okay? University of Belgrade produces twice as many papers as our top producer. That, I think, is not meaningless. My conclusions are that the top foundation universities produce significantly more research. I forgot to tell you, I'm from MEF, and my university is nowhere to be found on these charts, so I don't have a horse in this race. Okay, it's a bit easier for me to talk about this because my university won't be there for another 5 years at least. Large state universities are not terribly productive despite having a faculty of medicine, which is really hard to explain. If I'm the government giving them the money, I'm going to ask them what they are doing with this money. If they're not producing as much as Hacettepe with many more faculty members. Most of the output and impact, we know that already, is in sciences, medicine, and engineering. Most of the output is produced by a few stars. I decided not to show you. I was convinced by our panelists and the chairs not to show you individual numbers, but I can tell you that more than half of all citations at some of the efficient universities are produced by less than 20 faculty members. So, I mean, administrators know that, and they try their best to attract stars and retain stars. It does say something about distribution of output. It does say something about efficiency of units, though. And Turkish universities do not measure up to world standards. We have to admit that. I totally agree with Güven Hoca. We cannot compete with a full-service American university. That's out of the picture. But we have to pick and choose fields where we want to be good at, and then we need to be competitive in those fields. How do you achieve high research output? This is not a secret. First, you need to hire research-capable academics. That means you should not hire people you grow yourself. Inbreeding is not a good thing for research output maximization. You should go out and find the best researchers you can in the world. Then you do not overload them with teaching loads. 6 hours a week, 9 hours a week is probably the maximum you should target, although most Turkish faculty teach 15 to 20 hours a week. So that's one reason right there why we don't produce research. You need to have research budgets. People need money to do research. You need to build infrastructure for these faculty. You need to have libraries and labs for them. I mean, you hire an engineering faculty in the US, you have to give them anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million as setup fund. How much is setup fund in Turkey? Have you ever wondered that? It's between 0 and 10,000. So then you're supposed to put up you're supposed to apply to TÜBİTAK. Well, that's going to take a year. Without infrastructure, we can't blame our faculty members for not producing. We need to enable the faculty members through PhD programs and research staff. And, of course, we need to manage the careers. We need to give people incentives. We need to treat the stars differently from the non-stars. Most of the Turkish university academics are state employees, which means they're employed for life, no matter how many papers they write, no matter how good teachers they are. How can you possibly manage a system like that? You basically have no tools for management. No way of incentivizing research, no way of penalizing poor performance. That is one of the reasons why foundation universities are doing so much better than most of the state universities, because they do have incentive systems. They do hire research-able faculty. They give them more resources than state universities. They make them teach fewer classes. So they basically apply these rules. And if you don't apply these rules, then you end up at the other end of the spectrum. So that's basically my talk. If you like this stuff, go download it from my blog, and you get all the juicy details on who's doing what. All the voyeuristic desires will be fulfilled.
Thank you very much, Orhan Bey. That was a good segue to discussions, because it did open up a number of questions. In fact, what we also need to focus on is most of the discussions related to research productivity, whereas there has to be measures of how well we do actually educating the students, the undergraduates. What do they do? Because that's the bulk of the university's mission to start with. But at any rate, now we are opening the floor for discussion and questions to our fine panelists. Ercan.
I'm a participant, so I guess I can ask a question. My question is not specific to address to anyone, but I think to the whole panel, so they can decide. It's one thing is clear that the Turkish universities are not going to get, the resources doubled or tripled in the next 2 years or 5 years. That's clear. So the question is, how do you improve? Because we are not doing very well. That's established. We need to do better, but we don't have the resources that we think we need to do to be better. So one way is to leverage your resources, what you already have. And wouldn't it make sense for TÜBİTAK or TUSEB or for other funding agencies, when they announce funding, that will induce cooperation between different universities rather than compete with each other? So this is very common in the United States. We have we initiate, for example, Nano Initiative, and we ask people to form soft centers where there is one professor, one administrator, and $5 million for 5 years. And then 5 different universities or research centers come together, and then they bid for this competition. If they win, they get $25 million for 5 years, where they don't have to build a building, they don't have to build a big lab. They use their existing resources, and they leverage their resources with each other. So this mechanism doesn't seem to exist well, or doesn't seem to work well in the United States. So I would like to see what you guys have something to say about that.
So who would start with that?
I'm hoping either Ahmet Bey or Imran Bey.
Let me try to respond to that question. While we, as Turkey, I don't think we have a very good chance of being the top-ranking country anytime soon. But that doesn't mean that we should not try harder. And what I was trying to say is, I didn't mean that we should close your eyes and ears to what other people are saying, including rankings. But my point was, every university has its own unique mission. And if you look at the strategic plans of universities, there you will find the definition of success or performance. So most university administrators don't like the idea of rankings, because somebody else telling you what success is. And especially if that success is biased in terms of your mission components, meaning research and publication, as opposed to teaching and service or outreach, then you're somewhat reluctant to go with the expectations of the ranking systems. So that was my point. Now, what to do? You have to attract better qualified people with your available resources. And one of the issues that the state universities are facing today is low salaries. So how many world-class people can Harvard attract if it pays $2,000 for an assistant professor? Okay, I know money is not everything. And if you intend to get rich, academics is not the right place for that. I realize that. And we all realize that. But the economic package, the financial package is an important aspect. So what we try to do as Middle East Technical University is to offer other attractions. What are these? Well, to complement the financial package, we invest all our disposable funds in housing. So housing is a way to complement income, and we give our funding with priority given to young faculty members at the start of their careers. I'm talking about all sorts of financial support. But that's still an area where state universities are at a disadvantage. I'm talking about the financial package. What the university can offer to sort of offset that is prestige, feel-good factor, self-esteem, generated by being part of a university. And that part also includes the working environment, the living environment, the relationship among people, and the relationship between the faculty member and administration. There should be a concept of free trade or fair trade between the two. So the faculty member should be able to say, I will do my best for the university, and I know university will be supporting me with all its resources. So that's the idea of fair trade. And thirdly, you have to show the prospective faculty member or young faculty member that the university is rising, has a bright future. So he or she will have a very good chance of advancing his or her career and become a world-class academic. So this is one way of dealing with human resources issue. You have to attract the best qualified people with the best available resources, because people make universities. It's not laboratories, it's not buildings, it's not budget, but it's people, faculty members, and best students that you can get your hands on. So this is the main competition among universities. Secondly, I agree with you, you need resources to compete, and you have to sort of mobilize your faculty members, your human resources to generate funds, not in the commercial sense, but as a university, our aim has been to get more and more research funds on a competitive basis. And as a matter of fact, to the extent that TÜBİTAK resources have become more accessible, we've been pushing our faculty members to go for EU funds, because easy money corrupts. So you have to go after the difficult funding. So this is a way to generate funds. And as of today, I should tell you that about 1/3 to 40% of our annual budget comes from competitive research funds. So this is how you try to generate more funds. And third, to quote Salmi, the third component is good management. So you have to be transparent, fact-based, and based on merit. So people who choose your university will know that their success or failure will be in their own hands. So it doesn't, it's not based on who you know, but how well you do your job. So in effect, what you can do to get a better position is not shown, I think, by the ranking systems, even though we use ranking, as I've said at the beginning, we use it twice a day in the following sense. Of course, we use it for benchmarking purposes, not university by university, but
for based on research and industry collaboration. So we do use it for benchmarking purposes, but we also use it to close the information gap, because more and more universities try to get in touch with you. So you get an email message, you get a letter saying that such and such person would like to visit your university. If you don't know anything about the university, you look at the rankings, and we try to use different rankings to get a maybe more balanced area of what we're dealing with. And lastly, even though we try to limit it as much as we can in the national context, we use it for communication, promotion, marketing purposes. So if you get 85th place in Times Higher Education ranking, then we use it in international promotion. We use it as little as possible in national rankings, because it's more likely to become a beauty contest within the national sense, and we don't want to sort of act unfairly on new universities because they don't have a chance of getting high rankings in a very short time.
Thank you very much.
Let me say a few things about your question. I think quality faculty comes to work with quality faculty. We find that the most important thing that you can do is to keep the standards of hiring faculty, evaluating faculty, and promoting faculty as close to world standards as you can. Because then it really, I mean, obviously foundation universities are able to pay more money than state universities, but it doesn't really matter how much money you pay because they come to quality. And once this snowball begins to roll, it goes quite well. Now, coming back to your specific question, I agree completely that there should be collaboration. And the first thing that I did 6 years ago when I became president of Koç University is I visited Ahmet Bey because I wanted to collaborate with Matthew. About 2 weeks ago, I visited my colleague Haluk Bey because he just became the president of Hacettepe, and Hacettepe has the best medical school in Turkey, and we have a very, very good medical school also. And we have a foundation university, it's a state university, and just like Stanford and Berkeley trigger one another into excellence, there's an incredible potential here to trigger each other into excellence, because there are things that they can do that I cannot do, there are things that I can do that he cannot do. So, and TÜSEV or TÜBİTAK, funding programs that are defined, I agree with that in general, but not at the expense of killing curiosity-driven research. Because even in the United States, when I worked with NSF and ONR and AFOSR and all that stuff, and I brought $100 million to Stanford, so I did a lot of that, I was very cognizant of making sure that curiosity-driven research didn't die. Because NSF, for example, often defined avenues of research, topics, panels, bang, and then the little guy who's just following his curiosity is dead. So TÜSEV, I know Fahrettin Bey will not do that because he thinks just like us, but there's a danger there. There's a danger as you define topics and areas and collaborations. If you say you'll get higher chance of funding if you collaborate, well, that has some advantage, but it has some danger also. So we need to be careful. The administrators at the funding agencies have to really balance this. Otherwise, it will have the wrong effect. But really, I think university administrators can do nothing better than hiring faculty. The students come themselves. Our problem at the state universities has been mentioned before. In Turkey, I mean, the person who works like a dog and the guy who sits on his butt, if you excuse the expression, gets the same salary. I mean, that's not acceptable. They have to basically be, rewarded in a more diverse set of ways in order for them to be performing. Of course, in medical schools, this is easier because the medical school doctors are doing a larger range of things. But I'll let my colleagues address them.
Thank you.
Just a sentence from the medical point. I mean, all can agree that the H indexes and the papers and the publications are mostly driven by medicine in Turkey. I'm not ignoring the engineering, but medicine has a great part there. And there is a very big potential danger. And I'm saying this, I hope that you won't see it. The change in the health system and which affects the university, that the wages are based on performance. That means the clinical things that you do decides how much you get. That kills the research area, that time that the brilliant guys could spend. And that is a very great danger for Turkey to just, go down in the ratings internationally.
I just have one more sentence to add. I think the H index, I agree with this completely. Really, I'm a space scientist, so I'm a hard scientist, but I care about social sciences enormously. I made twice as many appointments in the last 6 years in social sciences than in hard sciences at Koç University. And the social sciences don't show up in that H index. Administrative sciences, economics, international relations, marketing, management, none of these show up in these H indexes. So I think it's, as I said in the very beginning, there is no one measure other than the footsteps of the poor students and the families, which they don't know anything, you think, but they actually do. And they pick universities by coming. You see, they take this awful exam, the ÖSS, and then they get points, and then they pick universities. They know who is good more than anybody else, actually. They know who is good. So none of these measures are valid, in my opinion, although we all pay attention to it. I agree with my colleagues.
Thank you. I think Güven has some remarks.
Just a quick comment. This one is working?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a quick comment on collaborative research issue. I think that's a good idea. That's something that we need to do in Turkey, basically. But I still insist that there is the need to focus and prioritize first. And there, the issue is, even, the ones who are going to set those priorities in our country does not have an idea about the research capacity, the capabilities set of the country, basically. Because we don't, count these things. How many people are doing this kind of research? How many people are doing this kind of? We don't have any such. I have been working with the guys in our old state planning organization for a time, just trying to get an idea about, they are giving this enormous amount of funds for establishing research labs all around the country in different universities, but they don't know, nobody knows in Turkey what kind of research is having been done up until now. Who are those people who are doing that research? So I think for collaborative research, there is the need to increase that connectivity in terms of learning more about the people that are working in your field in different parts of the country. So I think at the basic level, we need to do things first. And in addition to that, regarding collaborative and other issues too, I think it's kind of a cultural shock for researchers that are coming back to Turkey, because we are expecting, the universities are expecting also, for you to be kind of superheroes, Batman or Superman, kind of a guy, to do all these things together. If you have a lab, for example, you have to do the import things for the materials. You have to follow that process. You have to make the payments. These things are improving. But basically, you have to do teaching, and also you have to operate the lab. You have to look at the accounting things, because we are now very proud that, we have the technoparks, the university itself. But in the technoparks, then you are also liable for the tax authority too at the same time. While focusing on your research, you have all those, enormous issues that you have to deal with, and I think that's just killing people when they go back to Turkey. So with this institutional structure, even collaborative research is involved. So the universities first has to decide that their job is to service the researchers, just to help the researchers, basically. It's not like that at the moment, I'm afraid.
Any more remarks? Okay, there's another question.
Hi.
Just introduce yourself also.
Sure. My name is Uğur Uygur. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship here at Loyola University, Chicago. First, I'd like to thank TASSA for bringing Turkish American scientists and scholars on this wonderful occasion. In this conference, several speakers implied that the quality of university output depends on academic freedom and freedom of expression, either exercised or perceived by faculty. And as a Turkish American scholar myself, I read in the news with great anxiety that some of our colleagues are either imprisoned or punished because of exercising their opinions. I'm curious, as scholars yourselves, how does this have any effect on your daily lives? Do you worry about somebody watching over you when you write or when you speak or when you teach in the classroom? And as administrators, how do you advise your faculty when they make these difficult decisions on a daily basis?
Okay, who is first to respond?
Anybody there?
Arhamdi, are you?
Why is everybody looking at me? I tweet, I lose my job, so
Anybody?
Absolutely, it's an issue. We need to protect our faculty as best we can, but we can't tell them what to write or what to say. We need to treat it on a case-by-case basis, basically. It's a very difficult. I'm kind of glad I'm not president anymore, actually. I used to get calls about censoring this person or making sure that this person doesn't repeat the statement. You get this problem when you get into social sciences. When I was university only had business and engineering, I was just fine. Nobody bothered us. As soon as you get into political science and law, you end up having people who speak their mind, and what they say is not always well liked. I mean, you know all the facts. For a number of years, you couldn't even defend a thesis that focused on the Kurdish issue in Turkey. Clearly, there was censorship at all levels. Fortunately, most of us were maybe sheltered from this, but it is a very real issue, and our job is to make sure that we can produce as much science and as much new knowledge as possible without any harm coming to our faculty. I don't have a silver bullet or a silver guard, and I'm curious to find out how other presidents are dealing with this really loaded issue, but I won't force them to say anything, of course. I don't want to put them on the spot. It's a really tough issue.
Thank you. Anybody? Ahmed?
Well, I will say a few words nevertheless. Well, Turkey is going through a very difficult time due to conflicts on several dimensions. And it's not the first time. In my lifetime as a student and also academic, my university has found itself in conflict with the government many times. People were prosecuted, people were sort of fired, but we still think that academic freedom, freedom of expression, is a must, is a requirement that you cannot simply dispense with. So we will have to live through these difficult periods without losing your bearing. And some of the universities have gotten used to in sailing in choppy and very stormy weather and waters. So we're doing our best to keep our
bearing despite the adverse conditions. Yeah.
When you're a rector in Turkey, you worry about everything and anything. Not only the political situation, but how many toilet papers in the toilet as well. So it's all on our shoulders. So we think everything every day. I think I'm speaking on behalf of everybody here. But I come from a faculty. I'm graduate of Ankara University, undergraduate, Ankara University Faculty of Political Science, which is status as a faculty was taken away by the government in 1960s because it voted certain way, right? So Turkey is a country that changes 3 times in a day, right? And I work on political science. I'm an international relations expert. That's, Erhan said, you are lucky if you don't have political scientists at your university, but I work on political science. And I've been on public eye and Turkish TV last 15 years, commenting on government policies, mostly criticizing, of course, that I think is the job of intellectuals and academics. So I think, I don't tell anything to my faculty. I like to believe that they are responsible and reasonable enough to know where they are living and how to behave and what to do. Well, sometimes it's self-censorship or not, but you do whatever you do your best to increase the freedoms and to increase the quality of the research and to increase the possibility of presenting them to the public in general. This is what we do in Turkey, I think, nowadays, as well as I think in last 30 years it's been the same. I don't see, as a political scientist, I don't see too much difference in last 50 years in Turkey in the political scene. Right?
Thank you. We have another question.
Thank you. My question is not as
Sorry, can you introduce yourself?
That one. My question was more on the rankings and how your graduates are affecting that reputation. Even if without the ranking, sometimes the reputation is around. So my other question is related with the H ranking or what schools they're coming from, especially in the social science. You said, they do not have publication. Then how do you choose your candidates in your faculty without having any of those rankings? Then do you look back what schools they are coming, that they are from higher ranking institutions? Or one other question is like, when you have people, researchers applying from industry that they do not have academic publications, then what is your criteria?
So,
and this is for both for state and public schools.
Okay, let me answer if I can. So the criteria we use for promotion and appointments is outside letters of reference from peers in their field. So if, for example, in social sciences, let's say in sociology or history or some other related discipline, publications are not as important as books, and citations are not as important as the publishers of the books or something, then the colleagues that we ask them about know that. In other words, since we are getting letters, for every promotion we get 10 to 12 letters from world universities, and we basically ask them whether this person is promotable to associate professor or professor at their institution. If not, at what institution, at what kind of institutions. We don't necessarily want it to be promotable at Harvard, which if we are asking a Harvard professor, but we basically assess it with the help of people in that field who know the criteria of that field. In media and visual arts, for example, this becomes difficult. You're right, there are no publications. Then it might have to do with the art exhibits that they have done and the reviews that they may have received, the reputation of the person, and again from references, but not based on publications or books, but on other things. There's no other way than peers. It's basically peer review.
Okay, let me first of all answer your first question. Yes, your alumni, the success of your alumni goes a long way to building your reputation as a university. There's no question about that. And I see so many of our graduates here, and if we have been instrumental in helping them launch into very successful careers in a different country, then how much is each person worth in terms of H-index and how many papers are worth for each graduate? So that's something else. But in terms of publication and in the social sciences, let me pass on the information given to by us by the representative of Thomson Reuters, which is responsible for Web of Science and social science and science and also arts and humanities citation index. They in terms of citations, they agree that citations in the natural sciences is more relevant than in engineering, and citations in the social sciences should be taken by a grain of salt. And in fact, Web of Science does not have citation statistics for arts and humanities. Journal citation report does not include arts and humanities citations. So if you publish in for example, fine arts, you don't get citations. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very unusual to get citations in an arts and humanities citation index journal. So what we do is create different standards for social sciences. So in terms of promotion, we have area-specific expectations. You don't expect as many journal articles from a political scientist as you expect from a chemist. Of course. So this is how we deal with this.
And how about the industrial researchers applying as a faculty?
Industrial research, you're not talking about patents, or are you talking about... Sorry?
Başvuranları nasıl değerlendiriyorsunuz?
Well, if you are talking about research experience, or are you talking about publication based on industry research?
Experience.
Research experience is taken into consideration, but we would need, or we would still expect publications for appointment and promotion.
Well, thank you very much. In fact, this shows how important perception is in the hiring and academic administration. That's really what it all boils down to, and you just hope that you make the best decision. Now, we have two questions.
I've been waiting for a longer time. I deserve
it. Well, okay, you can go ahead and
thank you,
and then you'll be the next, and then that'll be...
I'm Baripik from University of Delaware. I'm conducting my PhD research here, and I definitely want to thank the organizers for a wonderful, wonderful conference. I think my contribution here will be a little bit more important because we heard lots of success stories from Turkish academics in here, from Turkish universities and everything. Now I think that I represent a section Turkish student who is willing to go back to Turkey as a future potential faculty member. And I definitely agree with Ercan Bey about the main, not the main maybe, but one of the biggest problems for us going back to Turkey is this research funding. And I also want to answer Ahmet Acar's statement saying that also the wages are a big problem, but I am very happy to say that there are still some scientists like me who are just willing to go back to Turkey because of their teaching idols as well, and also research idols, just because they are still idealistic. They are not only after money. You know, there are lots of opportunities in US for money and everything, but in that sense, I definitely say research might be more like a major issue than teaching. And in this sense, collaborations, of course, are wonderful examples, but I mean, actually wondering, especially the funding coming from industry. Do you see any potential in the near future with these industrial collaborations more contributions from industry. I've seen that TÜBİTAK also is offering lots of wonderful contributions also to R&D to their companies. But what about these collaborations between foundation universities or state universities and the companies? And especially since I'm a chemical engineering major, I'm very wondering about anything about sustainable energy, like renewable energy, any cases related to that. I see a great potential in Turkey.
Why don't we let the president
Sure.
respond?
I know. I like talking
Right.
about this. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for also speaking.
Was the question directed to me or Andrew? Well, let me reiterate my point. Salary, I think, is a hygiene factor rather than a motivation. So if you have sufficient income to maintain a decent way of life, that's usually enough for an academic. As I've said, if you expect to get rich, do something else. So this is why we're trying to provide the minimum income to supplement the income for our prospective faculty members. In terms of collaboration, there is more and more collaboration among Turkish universities. Let me give you a funny statistic. We have joint degree programs, undergraduate but basically graduate programs with 24 universities abroad, basically U.S. and, well, all of them, U.S. And Europe. For the first time, this past year, we started a joint degree program with Hacettepe University.
I think that's
So this is funny. I mean, this is funny on our part, but we started a PhD and MS program in neuroscience and technology in collaboration with Hacettepe University, which made perfect sense because we have, as middle sector, we have science, basic science, we have engineering technology, we have ICT, but we don't have clinical. They have a perfect partner for that, even though they, of course, have science and technology and all that themselves. So they were nice enough to collaborate with us. And we have been collaborating with other Turkish universities in the research environment, Horizon 2020 and 7th Framework before that, EU projects. And we do. So what I'm saying is, unless you expect to work in a very expensive, state-of-the-art subjects, then you have a very decent chance of getting sufficient funding in Turkey. And I don't know what your area is. You didn't say that.
Thank you.
Catalysis. Okay, so you will find perhaps a good environment to support your research, and not only Middle East Technology, but several other Turkish universities will provide the necessary environment for you.
Thank you, Ahmet Bey. In fact, TOP operates closely with the corporate environment in Turkey, so Güven Bey has some remarks.
Just let me add a few words about the corporate funding. I mean, when you look at the funding of research in Turkey, basically, it's still public funding that's moving things forward. But the company funding is increasing. So there is a growing interest, definitely. But I think that's why we need to be a little bit more choosy from now on. And we have to do this thing, this funding research issue, we have to take it into account together with the industrial policy decisions that the government is about to, has to make. We have to, they have to go in parallel with each other as far as I see, but we don't have that much of a coordination at this stage. There is the will, because there is the understanding that it's not possible to improve productivity growth in the country any other way. So we know that we have got to do something. But in Ankara, there is still not that strong consensus about supporting the corporate sector in this manner.
Thank you very much. We have one last question.
My question has two parts. One about university rankings. The other one is the rankings that are carried out for the schools, the faculty, like the business schools. Now, for the university rankings, I see there is disagreement or about the methodology used or even the measurement used. If you were to design the university ranking methodology, how would you do it? Would it be like Erhan Hoca's, maybe publication per faculty? That's the first part. And the second part is, do we participate in the business schools rankings? Does the media ask the question, why do we not have Booth or Kellogg in Turkey? I'm very familiar with those business school rankings where they don't use the publications. They use very much how the students are prepared, how fast they find the jobs, what are the average salaries, and things like more related to the education than the research. Do we participate in it, and how are we doing in those?
Thank you.
We don't. The Turkish versions of Economist or Capital produce their own rankings of business schools, which are a far cry from the comprehensive methodologies that are used in the U.S. But that is actually what needs to be done. You need to do before, after. What was your salary before you started your MBA? What's your salary now? How much have you learned in marketing? How much have you learned in finance? What is the value added of the university? Unfortunately, that's difficult to measure, and nobody is really trying that. I wish somebody took charge and did a more intelligent comparison of business, engineering, medicine, what have you, these faculties. There's not enough money to be made in Turkey, period, okay? U.S. News and World Report, as you know, has shut down its magazine. It survives strictly on its annual rankings issue. You know that, right? It used to be a magazine like Time and Newsweek. Now the magazine is no longer around. They only publish the rankings issue, and they make enough money, so they become a rankings company. There's not enough money to be made in sales of Economist or Capital in Turkey to spend a lot of energy and effort on ranking schools. We just don't care about education enough.
Any more remarks? Okay, I think time is getting late. This sort of concludes our panel. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Once again, Ercan Bey and Erhan Bey and Burhanettin Bey. I don't see him, but